Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have held a 2-hour-long phone conversation, and the biggest takeaway is that both leaders have agreed on the need for peace and an end to the Ukraine war. Both leaders have also agreed to improve bilateral ties between Washington and Moscow. Amongst the key agreements in the phone call was the beginning of a ceasefire on energy and infrastructure targets, as well as technical negotiations on the implementation of a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea. But Putin has not yet agreed to the 30-day truce proposed by the United States and has put forth, in fact, his demands of Ukraine renouncing the NATO membership, reducing its military and protecting Russian language in Ukraine. Donald Trump, however, claims that the two leaders have discussed dividing certain assets between Russia and Ukraine. But what are the larger implications of this phone call? We take this conversation forward. I have with me Dr. Bharat Barai, Chairman of the US-India Community Foundation, Dr. Sergey Dvarnyov, Director of Communication of BCMF, Christina Malik, Special Correspondent of Sputnik News, Glenn Grant, ex-advisor of the Ukrainian Defense Minister, and Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, who will also be joining us on the broadcast. But let me begin this conversation, if I may, with Christina Malik. Christina Malik, there is a lot of speculation that Russia is considering this phone call with President Donald Trump as a partial victory, simply because it is believed that the US was not able to pressurize Russia into accepting the 30-day truce. What really is the analysis from the ground?
Hello. For sure, we Russians do not consider this phone call as a victory. It's just a part of negotiations between President Vladimir Putin and President Trump. So the result of this negotiation was fruitful enough, as we can see. It's due to the time of this phone call, more than 2 hours. And the main point of this negotiation is mutual renunciation of strikes on energy infrastructure, both in Russia and in Ukraine. And it's not really a ceasefire. It's just a first step of possibility to make this ceasefire, I think.
Can I get a go ahead if we have our technical issues solved, please?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Christina Malik, coming back to you, what really is the biggest takeaway in Russia right now as far as this phone call is concerned? All right, we seem to have lost that line. Can I go ahead with the other guests? Okay. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, bringing you into the conversation. I want to understand from your perspective, what do you make of this phone call? Because it seems as though both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin feel that somewhere both have emerged victorious as far as their bit of the deal is concerned. But what really is your assessment of some of the information that has come out, with Russia really believing that that this is a partial victory because US has not been able to pressurize it into accepting the 30-day truce proposal, and at the same time Ukraine now coming out and saying that Russia has once again resumed its strikes and attacks on Ukrainian soil, and therefore Russia is somewhere sending another signal to the United States of America, perhaps. What's your reading of the situation?
My reading of the situation, Devika, is that President Putin got what he wanted. He has agreed to the President Trump's proposal that they do not attack certain types of installations, etc., which is fine. But he is not going to agree to a ceasefire until he's got the Ukrainians evacuated from Russian territory on one hand, and on the other hand, having got into this long drawn out conflict with Ukraine in the first instance, he is not going to stop until he gets firm guarantees that Ukraine will not be a NATO member, that Russia's historic borders are safe, and that the land that he has captured in the conflict is frozen according to the lines of actual conflict, very similar to, for instance, the way North and South Korea were divided many decades ago, and that the whole issue of who's going to keep the peace is resolved. So those will be sorted out over the next few weeks. In the meantime, President Putin gets breathing space to push out the Ukrainians from, I'm told, 12% of Russian territory that they are holding, or 16%. My colleagues here on television would be in a better position to confirm how much of it is, because I just go by what the net says. But certainly, if you ask me, President Putin has acted very smartly. He has not let down President Trump in public. He has agreed partially to what was demanded. On the other hand, he has stuck to Russia's national security interest, which is to hang on to the territory, to secure Russia's security, and to push Ukraine out of whatever territory they are still holding on to, which they had moved in earlier. So from my perspective, sitting in Delhi, when I could be corrected, it would appear to me that President Putin actually, in the conversation, was able to achieve Russia's major security concerns. David.
Okay, let me bring into this conversation Mr. Glenn Grant as well. Mr. Grant, I want to understand from your perspective, how exactly are the people of Ukraine at this point in time reacting to the developments that are taking place, and especially the news that has come out of this 2-hour-long phone call that has taken place between the Russian president and the American president?
Well, I think most people that I've spoken to, and an awful lot on social media, are quite clear that Putin has played Trump for a fool, and that this 2-hour phone call has only got extra benefit for Russia, not actually any compromise in the way for Ukraine. I mean, in the first place, as you say, the air attacks on energy and infrastructure. Well, Russia continued that last night. In fact, attacking a hospital twice, and also attacked an electric energy plant. So that's hardly a goodwill issue on that point. And of course, Russia actually benefits from this, because in the last couple of months, Ukraine has been more effective in hitting energy facilities than Russia has. So that's a plus for Russia. On the naval side, then that's also a plus for Russia, because Russia has been forced out of the Black Sea by Ukrainian naval drones, and now this will allow her to come back without being attacked by Ukraine. So it was 2 hours, in my view, 2 hours of wasted phone call, because there was no deal done in any way, except giving Russia, who as we know is the aggressor, actually giving them more. And I agree with the ambassador completely that Putin has played his part on what he sees as Russian security interests extremely well, but certainly hasn't been in the meeting. It certainly wasn't defended. That the Ukrainian victim part was not defended at all by Trump, or if he did, he gave in very quickly.
Mr. Grant, at the same time, on the flip side, the Russian narrative is that the US decided to stop military, financial as well as intelligence aid to Ukraine. However, as soon as the minerals deal was sealed and locked, the US in fact did start once again with the supply of military aid to Ukraine. So why exactly should Russia believe anything that the United States of America has to say?
I quite agree with you. I quite agree with you. But you have to remember through all this is that Russia is the aggressor. And therefore Ukraine has a justifiable right to be supplied by America in exactly the same way that Russia is being heavily supported by North Korea, whose soldiers are fighting on the Russian side, and Iran, whose drones are flying every night to kill people. So Russia cannot have it both ways. They can't complain about the US providing things to Ukraine when at the same time they're actually taking considerably large amounts of support from two other countries on their side. So it's do they trust US? Well, no, but nobody trusts Russia either, because they just carry on fighting and will delay, and then they will continue fighting again, because Putin is not going to stop.
Okay, I will come back to you in just a moment. I want to bring in Dr. Sergey Dvorninov into the conversation as well. Dr. Sergey, I want to understand from your perspective, would you agree with what the previous panelists have had to say, that in this particular phone call, Vladimir Putin has actually emerged victorious in somewhere convincing the United States of America that the US will have to listen to the demands that are being made by Russia?
Thank you so much, Devika, for invitation. First of all, I want just remind the root cause of the conflict in Ukraine is the desire of the Western Alliance to destroy Russia and use Russian resources to enrich itself. This project was a fiasco. And right now we can see that administration of Donald Trump completely turned to another direction, because mindset of Donald Trump is a big difference. For example, Joe Biden was full of hypocrisy, and even he, in his interview, once he named our national leader killer, which is not acceptable at all. And of course, I'm partly agree with my previous colleagues and speakers, and partly completely disagree with them, because it's not Russian aggression. We know very well that this project to put Ukraine fully in conflict is a project last 20 years. Immediately after destruction of USSR, and when USSR was felt in the Cold War, Americans, politicians, and decision makers start to continue their game to destroy not only USSR but Russia. And fortunately, we have such a responsible leader, and Vladimir Putin, who is wise and very prominent and very spiritual. And right now, a mindset of Donald Trump is completely opposite. It's win-win strategy. We should pray for peace. We should trade for peace. Why we should destroy Russia if we can start some not only peacemaker negotiation, but also some trading with Russia? Like a lot of companies which already leave Russian market, they willing come back. And right now, I know this very like inside information I have that is not only why conversation itself was 2 hours, because it's a big topic regarding not only situation in Ukraine, it's topic regarding to restart and refresh all our relationship with Russia, between America and Russia, because as I want again remind, famous American prophet, his name was Edgar Cayce, he already predicts it will be friendship, deep friendship between our countries for the benefit of the whole world. And right now the main question, when the Mr. Zelensky, who is not president right now, he already lose all his power, his legacy, when he will be removed, and when we can expect appearance of new, very responsible leader of Ukrainian nation. That's all.
Okay, I want to bring in Dr. Bharat Barai into the conversation as well. Dr. Bharat Barai, from your perspective and assessment, who really then will be the biggest loser as far as these negotiations are concerned? Donald Trump has made a promise to his people that he will put an end to what he calls as a useless war. Vladimir Putin is being put in a position where he clearly is making certain demands that are outrageous to Ukraine. However, does Ukraine really have any say left at this point in time?
Devika, the reality is President Trump is a realist. He looks at it sitting in United States, what is feasible under the situation. We are not in a court of law to prove who is right and who is wrong. Clearly speaking, Russia has committed aggression against Ukraine. But reality is, Ukraine is a country of 38 million people with limited military resources, while Russia is 4 times the size of about 144 million with huge amount of armaments. Putin is a dictator, and even though he has lost almost 130,000 people and wounded almost 250,000 more, he doesn't care. He gets them from prisons, he gets them from wherever he can get, North Korea, Iran, Chechnya. So the reality is, does Ukraine have anything that it can keep on fighting on its own? People of USA have given about $240 billion worth of aid, and Europeans have given somewhat similar amount. I realize there may be dispute, but there is no question that US taxpayers have given billions of dollars worth of aid. Now the question is, where does the thing end? Will it keep on fighting till all 38 million people are either killed or destroyed, or come to some conclusion? Now we look at the historical perspective. Crimea was part of Russia till about 1954. When Ukraine was part of Soviet Union, because physically Crimea is connected to Ukraine, Russia transferred the management administration of Crimea to Ukraine. So now they are asking back that, hey, when you were part of Soviet Union, we gave you Crimea, but you are no longer part of Soviet Union starting 1991, and we want our territory back. The other issue is about some of the eastern regions of Ukraine, Donetsk and others, which are Russian speaking. The Russians are claiming that these people are more Russian than they are Ukrainians. So these are the historical conflicts that are going on. Remember in 1962, when Russia wanted to put their missiles in Cuba, President John Kennedy said that there is no way we are going to allow you to have hostile missiles right in the neighborhood of United States. And I think Russians are saying the same thing, that let Ukraine be a neutral country, not be part of NATO, and not host any nuclear missiles. Now it's true that Ukraine tactically made a big mistake by giving up nuclear weapons that were hosted on Ukrainian territory. In fact, there were more nuclear weapons hosted on Ukrainian territory than on Russian territory. But as a part of so-called guarantees, they gave it up. So they do not have a trump card to fight against the Russians. And President Trump is saying, hey, let us find some solution rather than thousands and thousands of people getting killed on both sides, infrastructure being destroyed.
Yes.
So many Ukrainian families have been displaced. So I think he's trying to find a realistic solution which is feasible under the situation, not what is right and what is wrong.
Okay. I want to bring back Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee into the conversation. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, if it reaches a stage where one has to now do something or extend some sort of or send rather a message that generates trust, this has to now be a trust building exercise between the US and Russia mainly. Who currently has the cards to play in such a move?
In the first instance, Devika, and I'd like to follow up from the last panelist to say that when the Soviet Union disintegrated, there were certain red lines that were drawn up amicably between the present Russian Federation and the West, including the Minsk agreements, etc. And there was a clear understanding that there would not be NATO nuclear missiles pointed at the heart of Russian territory. The situation between Ukraine and Russia is that these are two estranged brothers joined at the hip. As far as Crimea is concerned, it has always been Russian. And Ukraine, especially the eastern part of Ukraine and Russia, share a common history, common culture, common language, common church, a common civilization. They may try to deny it now, but the point is that that is history. It was extremely foolish, in my perspective, for the West to try to prop up Zelensky as a kind of threat to Putin and to threaten that they are going to get NATO membership, when it was very clear that Zelensky and Ukraine did not qualify for the stringent membership criteria either of NATO or of the European Union. Moreover, coming from the land of Chanakya, as you and I do, it is a mistake when your neighbor is a large furry bear to pull its tail too hard. Why do that? Much better to be neutral and to be safe. Why do that? It's exactly the same issue as India and China have. How does the elephant dance with the dragon? We manage it. We keep a little distance. Elephant and the dragon cannot dance together. We keep a little distance. That did not happen with the Ukrainians. In my perspective, Devika, this war is going to conclude because the American taxpayer is tired of billions of dollars going down into Ukraine, and the determination of certain Western European countries and of the former President Biden that Ukraine should fight until the last Ukrainian standing. That is not fair to Ukraine either. So there should be some peace guarantees, and in my perspective, that the conflict will be frozen once Putin has got back what he wants. It will be frozen. There will be peacekeepers. There will be peacekeepers from the UN, from the Security Council, because Russia is not going to accept either European peacekeepers or American peacekeepers. It will have to be a multilateral peacekeeping mission. Maybe the Indians, maybe some other country that is acceptable to both Ukraine and to Russia. They would be stationed, and there would have to be clear security guarantees that Ukrainian security is safe, but Ukraine will not be part of NATO. I think on that basis, you could have a peace agreement. That is exactly the way it's going. That's the way it's going to be. And finally, I'd like to say, especially to my co-panelists who are from the US, that it was Dr. Henry Kissinger who said that a successful peace agreement is one that does not please both sides, either the victor or the victim, to the extent that either of them want to reverse the peace agreement. In other words, a successful peace agreement, according to Henry Kissinger, is one that has enough to please the victim and enough to please the victor. In my perspective, what I have outlined is exactly the kind of peace agreement that Dr. Kissinger would have endorsed had he been alive today at the age of 103. Thank you, Devi.
All right, let me bring back Glenn Grant in the conversation. Mr. Grant, then I want to understand from your perspective, what becomes the future of Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say that I'm disgusted by some of the comments from people who should know better about sovereignty of a country. And, you should not be saying what you think the peace should be for this country. It is for the Ukrainians to decide what peace is and what they want to do. And if they want to fight for their national survival, I will remind you that many other countries have fought for their national survival, including Vietnam against America and several others. And the absolutely disgusting suggestion that America is trying to tell the Ukrainians to defend themselves to the last person is disgusting. There is not a single Ukrainian of the tens of thousands I have talked to who would even hint at that. They would tell the Americans to go away. This is our war. Help us, but don't tell us what to do. And that is how they are. And I'm sorry, but that's the same with Zelensky. Zelensky is not an illegal president. He was voted in as president. And when you have a war, the president stays exactly the same way as Churchill did during the war. Okay, there was no election in UK during the war, and there will be no election in Ukraine during the war. Zelensky is the president, and he will stay so. And as for thinking that you can have a just peace when Russia owns 20% of the land, has murdered, raped, been bestial, terrorized, actually cut the balls off men before they hand them back. If you think that a country is going to have a just peace with any of your ideas, in those circumstances, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. It's not going to happen. And if they fight to the last person, they may well do so, because they would rather die free than they would take the sort of peace that India and Russia would wish to impose upon them. Now, that's a little bit of a lecture, but I'm sorry. And as for the last bit, I don't see any Americans in here at all. So I don't know where the American bit came from. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Sergey, I want to understand from your perspective, what do you think will become the future of Volodymyr Zelensky in this particular war?
Thank you so much. It's a very important question, but I can see that Vladimir Zelensky already completed his mission. First of all, he was not an independent politician. He was chosen by Western Alliance, especially with a purpose, with an aim. He had no any kind of political experience. He was just comedian. And that's why he was purposely chosen for this. During his election, he promised that he will bring peace, but he bring war, unfortunately. Right now, his mission was conflict. But come again to America. I can compare Donald Trump with John Kennedy and Mahatma Gandhi. Why? Because he break down stereotypes. He remove and reduce this enmity. Because Russia and Ukraine conflict was so well organized and outside, and Western Alliance pushed Ukraine to fight with Russia without any resource, right? And right now we can see that Donald Trump break down the stereotypes, like Mahatma Gandhi. All his team, they achieve independence. India achieved independence because of Ahimsa movement. They not fight, they pray to God. And right now, I believe that two leaders, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, both of them, they are believers. That's why I, like a religious philosopher, I can see that we cannot solve all this problem with materialistic approach. We should definitely find the will of God in this conflict. And we should bring some spiritual energy. That's why I already mentioned a lot of times in our panel discussions that we should involve some spiritual leader, some expert, some scientists in this peacemaking dialogue. It's very important because we should change the vision. We should change the paradigm, you know. And I completely believe to peace. Why? Because it's a prediction of Edgar Cayce. When I mention his name, nobody can give some feedback. But we should again and again remind that we have our human civilization. We have some more challengers. Like we should save our planet together, and we should reduce our enmity to each other. That's why global leaders like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, both of them, they're very responsible, and I believe that it will be real peace.
Okay, all right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, but I thank all of our panelists for joining us to take this pertinent conversation forward. We will continue to track developments on the Russia-Ukraine war on the other side. Stay tuned.